Ho, 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 ho. Ho, 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 ho. Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas. Ho, 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 ho. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the best time of year. Ho, 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 ho. Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, family. Merry Christmas. Ho, 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 ho. Oh, well, who do we have here?
Yeah.
Hello, little boy.
I'm a little boy.
Merry Christmas to you. Come on over here. Come on over here. Come on over here. Ah, there you go. Hello, little boy. How are you today?
I'm good.
Are you good? Are you ready for Christmas?
Yes.
Look at Santa Claus. Tell me, have you been a good boy this year?
Yeah.
You've been a good boy?
Yeah.
Really? Are you sure?
Yes.
Positive.
Okay.
Okay, then what does a good boy want for Christmas?
Good. Santa's giving not to be presents.
I did not understand that, little boy. Tell me one more time. What do you want for Christmas?
Presents.
Presents?
Yes.
Any present in particular?
Yeah.
What?
Santa's
Anything your heart desires. Anything your heart desires. What would you like?
I like a hat.
You want a hat?
Yes.
Done. Okay, little boy, I'm gonna get you a hat for Christmas, okay? Merry Christmas, and have a beautiful time with your family. Off you go. Bye. Yeah. Woohoo! See ya. See ya. Merry Christmas, Portal to Central family. This is I, dear Saint Nick, and I am here today. Here you go. I am here today to do the introduction for Neil of Portal to Ascension. So glad to be here with you all to celebrate this festive time of year. And without any further ado, let me introduce you to the one, the only Neil from Portal to Ascension. He finds it in his heart every single year for 6 years, for 6 whole years, to do this event in honor of the true origins of Christmas and the true origins of Dear Saint Nick, aka myself. And today, we are going to go deeper into the Santa Claus mystery like never before, dissect all ancient cultures to coming to this present moment of how we came to Christmas today. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to the founder of Portal to Ascension, the man, the myth, the legend, Neil Gore. Hello, family. So good to be with you all. Thank you so much, Santa Claus. Thank you for the introduction. And hope you're all doing well today and having a beautiful day. I had to bring in Santa for this one. You know, I always do the introductions myself, but today I felt like we needed to have someone else to come in and do the introduction. So, to be honest, for the last hour, I've been driving around town to Walmarts and Targets looking for a beard, and instead we used a diaper. So that was that was the beer that we ended up coming up with. And so I'm glad to be here with you all. Hope you're doing beautifully, having a great day, and excited for this time of year. Thank you for joining me. Let's see who we have in the chat here before we get into today's ancient mysteries and into the story of Christmas. Who do we have? Go ahead and say hi. Say where you're from. Go ahead and share any energy that you like. What you're up to today. How's your week going? What are you doing tomorrow? Welcome from Michigan. We got British Columbia in the house. We got Feline Being. Welcome, welcome. So great to be here with you too. And Merry Christmas to you, Audrey. So, guys, this presentation today, I'm really excited about. If you who has come and attended this presentation in the last few years, I'm curious to know who has actually been a part of the past ones because I did a lot of upgrades today. Before we get started, just put your energy in the room. Where are you hailing in from? We got Global Peace Tribe in the house. Welcome. Scott, good to see you, brother. All right. You know, it's funny because this morning I was trying to, because he has never seen Santa before, or he like believes in Santa, right? So that was my nephew. And, but he has not actually, I think he went to see Santa when he was 1. He's 3 now, and he got really freaked out. So this whole morning, I just kept telling him like what I was going to do so that he wouldn't freak out, which was really fun. First time attending. All right, so today is going to be awesome because I'm actually shifting. I've added so much more information here. From popular demand from some people that have emailed me, one person in particular had asked to extend the presentation a little bit, add some more information. And it's so interesting to note, like I was going through this presentation, the one that I made a few years ago, and just observing how I've evolved in my understanding of this day, of what not only Christmas represents, but just this time of year. As you're going to see, it's really more about the solstice celebration, the position of the sun in the sky. You know, the solstice starting on the 21st, then 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, and then the sun beginning its movement into extending the days starting on the 25th. Just the other day, somebody emailed me yesterday, actually, and I had no idea that this is what solstice meant. Sol, of course, means the sun. She sent me an article where this guy was explaining it. And stis means still. So solstice means the sun is still. The sun is still in the sky for 3 days, and then it resurrects on the 25th. And I was just telling my cousin downstairs, I was sharing with her about how Christmas isn't about Jesus' birthday and how it's more about the sun and the resurrection. And she goes, well, that's interesting. Isn't the resurrection in Easter? So to me, it's very interesting actually to note that even though we celebrate the resurrection in March, technically he should have been born around March 25th is when they believe he was born. Multiple days have been given. And this time, even though it represents a resurrection, has been now dubbed as his birth date. So it's interesting to see how it's been inverted. So I'm just going to check in with you guys, see who else is in here before we begin. We got Oklahoma representing, Central California. All right, guys, let's do this. Start this presentation from the beginning here. Thank you. All right. Welcome, guys, to the pagan origins of Christmas, New Year's Eve, sun worship, and the Christ consciousness. Something I wanted to add this time is really like why am I doing this presentation? I love doing like the whys in the beginning. And that really goes back into my awakening story, how I got into all this in the first place. I was born and raised in England. Well, I was born in England in 1982, and I was raised Hindu, right? So for the first 12 years of my life, I lived in England. And when I moved to the US when I was 12, one of the things I started seeing later, not exactly when I was 12, but when I was like 16 or 17, while I was in high school, I started noticing similarities between Krishna and Christ, Yeshua, right? And I started wondering because in England, when I was 12 years old in England, I actually went to a Catholic school. Even though I was raised Hindu, I went to a Catholic school for 1 year. And in this Catholic school, I was, I had to go to Bible study. And the priest in that class that was teaching us would often say and make sure that we knew that what that he considered paganism or polytheism and monotheism both operated and evolved independently of each other. They had nothing in common, right? Is what I was always told. However, I started seeing when I was a little older in high school, wait a second, there's so many different similarities between these faiths. How could polytheism, aka Hinduism in this moment, and Christianity be so individual and separate from each other when there seems to be so many overlaps? And all these similarities were coming about, and that was really what sparked the question in my mind. Because I'd been celebrating Christmas my whole life. Christmas was a part of, I was my favorite time of year, and it still is. We'd have big family parties, big gatherings. There was so many presents. Everybody was so happy. Such a festive time of year. And so for me to now see that, wait a second, there's this connection here, started sparking this curiosity in me. And the curiosity was, what is the root of all religion? And if I could say, if there's anything that started Portal to Ascension, if there was one thing that really was the foundation of everything that I ended up doing, right? There's two major things, but we only talk about one right now. Was, what is the root of it all? If we see connections into supposedly independent and individualized separate faiths, religions, was there once a time where we all had one faith connected? Was there a root to it all? And as I started looking, yes, I saw more and more the connection between Yeshua right here and Krishna. There were so many different similarities, and here's just a few of them, right? They were both treated as a ruler at birth. One was a cow herder, which is like the Krishna was a cow herder, and which in the Western world, they were herding cows in India, but in the Western world, they're herding sheep. And Yeshua was the good shepherd. The people were the sheep, right? And he was the shepherd of men. They both preached unconditional love. They both performed miracles, right? Krishna raised someone from the dead. Yeshua did the same thing. He fed thousands. They both did a sermon teaching righteousness and moral law. They both were the incarnation of God, right? And we'll get into the incarnation of God and how that connects to the Roman Empire a little later. They both had apostles. They both had deaths and ascension, resurrection motives in this story. They both have celebrations marking their birth and their life. And they were both seen as the savior. Yeshua was obviously known as the savior, the second, the savior of humanity, and Krishna was also known as the savior. Krishna even said, "I am the way and the light." Isn't that interesting? Because that's what Yeshua said as well. And then both of them are are foretold to return. There's not a coincidence, not a coincidence that there's Krishna and Christ, Chris. That is not a coincidence at all. So the second coming to me was another interesting component. If you look around all faiths around the world, so many of those faiths speak about the return of some sort of divine being. And even in Judaism, for example, in Judaism, technically their prophet that they've always foretold has not come, right? And even though Yeshua was one of the prophets, he is not the final one. That's the whole thing with Judaism. So they're waiting for the return. And then in Christianity, of course, we have the second coming of Christ. And then we have, even within Hinduism, Krishna is supposed to come back and chop off the heads of the ones that are the evil doers. Now you got to look at this metaphysically, because when you're looking at chopping off the head of the evildoers, you're really talking about chopping off your ego, right? It's not actually literally somebody coming to kill you and take off your head. So these things started sparking some deep underlying questions inside of me. And the questions I had was, how can the most celebrated holiday, right, that is from a monotheistic religion be connected to paganism? I remember when I first found out that Christianity was a pagan holiday. I mean, Christmas was a pagan holiday. I was mind blown. I'd been celebrating this thing for my whole life. I had no idea. At first, I stopped celebrating. This is 2001. Even though I still went to family gatherings, I was not like fully invested like I had been before. I had 2001, 2002, 2003, and then I started loving it even more, because when I realized the deep underlying ancient history of this day, it started giving me reverence and respect for this day on a level that goes so far beyond anything that I've ever been taught or anything that's ever been shown. And I would say in the last 3 days, redoing this presentation for you guys has actually deepened my connection to it even more. And we're going to get into some really deep, cool, esoteric wisdom about what was kept from Christmas or what was thrown out. Why does Christmas have pagan roots? I needed to know why. And then today we're going to also speak about the origin of the Christmas tree, presents, ornaments, Santa Claus, and New Year's celebrations. But first, it won't be right of us to speak about Christmas if we don't speak about the solstice, because there is 100% a connection to the solstice, which is why Christmas is actually on this time of year. The winter solstice that began on the 21st, and today is the last day of the solstice. So it's actually a beautiful way doing this today, because tomorrow the sun resurrects and begins its journey into the light. Tomorrow is the day that the light triumphs over darkness. The winter solstice has been celebrated in antiquity and seen as a significant time of year. In many cultures has been marked by festivals and rituals. It marked the symbolic death and rebirth of the sun. They even have the Mayan calendar connection there as well. And the 3 days of darkness. I'd love to get some interaction as we're going on today. Question for you guys. Do you remember, like, if you were into this awareness back in 2012, 2010, something like that, even before, a lot of spiritual leaders, facilitators, presenters were speaking about December 21st, 2012, also the solstice, and how there will be 3 days of darkness, prophesized to be 3 days of darkness. So we have the Mayan calendar connection, December 21st, 2012. We have the 3 days of darkness, where a lot of people actually believed that the Earth's axis would stay still and that we would see 3 days of actual darkness. Well, to me, it was never going to be actual darkness on one side of the planet, light on the other side of the planet. What it represented was the fact that those are the darkest days of the year. Darkest as in the actual light on Earth. There's more darkness overnight, and the days are shorter. This place has been significantly, this time of year has been significantly used for a time of shadow work. This is what this time of year is really representing. And it's so interesting to note that March 25th used to be our New Year's. And we're going to get into all that too for quite some time. But the winter season was really about that deep work. So yesterday, guys, I went on to do some research because I was like, it's so interesting. All of this information that we have about solstice, Christmas, all these different winter festivities coming together. These are all hemispheric only, meaning all of this information is only northern hemisphere. Right? Do you guys get that? This is all based on your hemisphere, because in the south, it's summertime. There is no 3 days of darkness. There's 3 days of light. But what happened, right? We got to do this disclaimer about the south of the world, Africa, Australia, South America, and so on, is that what happened was before these ancient civilizations in the south had time to evolve to create holidays like we have for Christmas, right? They were colonized. And when they were colonized, they then adopted the winter festivities of the North, thereby throwing them out of sync in the South. Which is also why, for example, Yeshua dying at the cross, Jesus dying at the cross, was really significant for the implementation of Jesus's birthday during this time of year because it was the 3 days of darkness, because it represented shadow work, because it represented deep reflection. So now, if you look into South America, what is their connection? Jesus is definitely a person in their life, but Jesus is the cosmic teacher. Mother Mary is the facilitator and the practicality in the physical world. The reason why Mother Mary took a hold in the South is because during this time of year when they were celebrating Christianity and Christ in general, it was a time of plentiful. It was a time of abundance, a time of light, a time of beauty. So, one of the many reasons why Mother Mary took a hold in the South Hemisphere rather than the Northern Hemisphere has to do with the fact that the connection to the crucifixion wasn't as deep as those in the North who had these 3 days of darkness and came from the solstice celebrations. And these people in the South already had a deep connection to Mother Earth. So the Mother Earth motive and the Mother Mary motive as the sustainer, the nurturer, the lover, the fertility, the agriculture was so abundant during the Christmas time, during right now in the Southern Hemisphere, that they ended up doubling down on Mother Mary rather than going into the Protestant views where it was Christ focused and Mother Mary was a close second. So during the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, the Earth's axis tilt results in the sun appearing at its lowest point in the sky at noon. This phenomenon leads to the shortest day and longest night of the year in the northern hemisphere. So that's quite literally what's going on in the stars. And let's do some gods of the solstice. Ancient civilizations for thousands of years have been worshiping gods at this time of year. And we have some of them here. We have god Saturn, Sol Invictus, Mithra, Calaic. Ancient cultures viewed solstice as death and rebirth. Here we go, another Christ connection. Often symbolized by the death and rebirth of the sun. This translated to the sun god of the respected culture. In many civilizations, tribes and civilizations, the gods were the exact same, but with a different name. And the Romans were really, really good at this. They loved, if you know anything about Roman history connected to Egypt and Greece, you would know that the Romans loved going around the world and meeting all these pagan tribes and conquering them, of course, but then connecting their gods to those beings, right? Just like the Greeks did with Hermes and Thoth. They were like, oh, this is actually our god, like this, and they actually adopted other gods, and they even changed the names of their own gods based on that. So when Christianity came about, and when Constantine changed things in 325 AD, there was nothing different here. Constantine, it was the same thing. Now there's another god. His name is Jesus. And let's incorporate him as he is the son. He is also the son of God as one of these gods of the solstice. And he became incorporated and they started connecting their own gods, Sol Invictus, Mithra, to Jesus. And other sun gods we have here. We have Alcleon, we have Amaterasu in Japan, the Baldur Norse god, Mithras in Rome, Demeter in Greek, Horus in Egypt, and of course, Krampus, who we're going to do a whole deep dive on Krampus today. Son of Hell, the Norse god of the underworld. With the spread of Christianity, Krampus became associated with Christmas, despite efforts by the Catholic Church to ban him. And then we have Spider Woman, the Hopi Spider Woman. Suns, it was all representing. Why were the sun gods here? Because it was the sun that was stuck in the sky, and it was representing the sun trying to fight against those dark days so that eventually we'd have light. And maybe there was a time of primitiveness where our ancient civilizations after the fall from a higher state of consciousness, will look up at the sky and they will see the sun lowering and lowering in its ebb every day. It will look to them as if the sun was dying. But then one day, all of a sudden, the sun begins once again and starts lighting up the sky once again. And when it lights up the sky again, they ended up creating festivities around the celebration for this time of the year. The connection between the Mayan calendar and the winter solstice lies in the alignment of certain Mayan structures with the astronomical events, particularly the position of the sun during the solstice. Chichen Itza contains a large pyramid known as El Castillo, or the Temple of Kukulkan. This pyramid is designed in such a way that during the spring and fall equinoxes, a shadow cast by the sunlight creates an appearance of a serpent descending or ascending the staircase. This event is often referred to as the serpent effect or the snake of sunlight. It's really interesting to me that we have the equator starting around Ecuador, right, in the Americas. So when you go north of that, now I'm living in Colombia right now. I'm visiting family in the U.S., but I'm living in Colombia, which is just north of Ecuador, and so it's interesting to see what their ancient connection was, being so close to the equator. And then when you go to north, you go to the Mayans, the Aztec, and the North America, and they have similar solstice celebrations, different ones that represented different things, but they had a reverence for the sun because they observed the same thing in the sky. And then we have, of course, the Christ connection. We have the sun god, which is the Son of God, right? Christianity, guys, is a continuation of the sun worshiping cults. They never ended. The sun god equals the Son of God. The sun stops at the same angle and then begins to move 3 days later. The sun dies and reborn. The Son of God dies and is resurrected. So let's go way back into time now, okay? You guys ready? We're going to go way back. The days of Yahweh. We're going to go back. We're going to talk about the Old Testament, but we're going to go back to before the Old Testament was created, in the times of Yahweh. How did we go from the many to the one? The Old Testament has a quote from Yahweh, and Yahweh says, "You shall have no other gods before me." Okay? You shall have no other gods before me. This was another smoking gun to me. If Judaism is based on monotheism and Christianity is a monotheistic religion that came from Judaism, why is the God of Judaism telling us to have no other gods before him if there's only one God? The original translation, though, before that Old Testament translation, "You shall choose no other powerful one before me." They weren't called gods. Gods were the names given later. "You will choose no other powerful one before me." Many gods became one, Yahweh. Yahweh is the God of Saturn. He took the credit for all the gods and became synonymous with the sun god. Side note, disclaimer, okay? Detour, not disclaimer, detour. This one, like, I got to do a whole presentation on this because this blows my mind to think about it. When was the worship day for Jews? It was the Sabbath. Which day is Sabbath? It was Saturday. Why is it Saturday? Because Saturday is Saturn Day. It's the day in worship of Saturn. Why do they worship Saturn Day? Because Yahweh was the god of Saturn. Christianity comes about. The Sabbath turns into Sunday. Why does it turn from the Sabbath to Sunday? Is because they were no longer worshiping Yahweh, they were now worshiping the sun. It became a day of worshiping the sun God, the Son of God, the sun in general. There was a shift, which goes into Paul Wallace's work and my own information as well, that is that Christianity was not a continuation and an evolution of Judaism. The real reason for Yeshua's existence on earth was to correct where Judaism had gone astray. Now, let's talk about some ancient religions here. And a lot of these ancient cultures, civilizations are pre-monotheistic, right? We had worshiping of all types of planetary bodies. Many of them worshipped more, right? In Egypt, we have multiple planetary bodies being worshipped: Sun, Saturn, Venus, and so on and so forth. In India as well. But then there was a day where monotheism came about. And what was that transition from the many to the one? That's what we're going to look at now. We have the moon religions. We have Wicca, ancient Celtic, the Sumerians, but the Sumerians also worship many other gods, many other planetary bodies. Pre-Islamic Arab, Mycenium, and then we have sun religions: ancient Egyptian, Inca, Vedic, Aztec, Mithraism. And then we have Venus religions. Ancient Rome had a connection to Venus. Canaanite, Mesoamerica, Phoenician, and then Saturn religions: Roman, Carthaginian, Chaldean, Norse, right? As we're doing this, like, I love to do everything intentionally. Just take this in. The ancient culture and the ancient connection we have to all of our cosmos and how it connects to celestial bodies, including, don't forget, the central sun. Mayans talk about the central sun. So many ancient cultures talk about the central sun. Guess what? The central sun is not actually the sun. It's the black hole in the center of our galaxy. A connection to that. And this presentation is going to end with the black hole because that's where it all began. So we're going to end where it began. We're moving from these linear time religions to a galactic religion, if you can call it that. The religion of no religion. And this one here, I'm just going to go right past it, but this is just more connections. Now, these are the deities of these religions as well: Egypt, Thoth, Mesopotamia, Ningal, and Sin. The Mayan, Kanish Ahu. The Norse, Freya. These are the gods that had the connection to these planetary bodies. In Sumeria, we have Inanna. In Babylon, we have Ishtar. In Rome, we have Venus. The polytheistic pagan past conformed into one in 700 BCE. I only found this out. I've been in this world for a while, and I only found this out 3 years ago, and it rocked my world. And you got to look at my interview with Paul Wallace, and he actually quotes me in his book talking about this, and where we talk about this shift. But did you guys know that it's not too hard to find out that the early Israelites were polytheistic? It's not a conspiracy theory to think that. It's true. The early Israelites were polytheistic. They had pagan, there's the pagan roots right there. Archaeology and early Hebrew texts show the Israelites originally worshipped multiple gods. These were the deities that they had before Yahweh took over. Yahweh, the storm, the war god of the south. Storm, war god. The Old Testament is like one massive battle. Yahweh just telling people to kill people, right? A lot of people say, like, it's crazy how much love there is in the New Testament and how much fear of God there is in the Old Testament. The phrase, a healthy fear of God, literally came from the Old Testament, because if you didn't do what God said, he would just kill you, right? There's even an example in the Old Testament where King David, right, after conquering Palestine / Israel, King David goes, wow, we've been fighting all these wars. I think it's time for us to be a little more careful and precise with the wars that we choose to fight. So why don't we go ahead and count all of our people in our military, just so we can do a head count of everyone? Yahweh finds out, and Yahweh goes, oh, hells no, pretty much. How dare you? How dare you count the military without me telling you to? You don't go to war when you want to go to war. You go to war when I tell you go to war. So I forget the number, but he killed Yahweh just to prove a point to King David. Killed tens of thousands of his own soldiers in Palestine. Killed them, his own people, right? the war god of the south. El, yep, exactly. El, the higher creator god. We have Asherah. This one is beautiful connection. I see we got Sasha and Gemma in the house, and Sasha's connected deeply to the Pleiadians. Asherah was the god of the Pleiades in ancient Israelite texts. You can find this information out there. Asherah existed. She was the fertility mother goddess, often portrayed as Yahweh's consort. We have Baal, which also was in Egypt. Canaanite, storm, and agriculture god. We have Astarte, which is the goddess of love, war, sexuality, Shemush. We have Shemush, Molesh, Rashbesh, Anat, Us, and others. These are like guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This isn't even all of them. These are 10 of the original Israelite gods. You shall have no other gods before me, said Yahweh. But then what changed? Today we're doing a deep dive, guys. We're going to get into Christmas ornaments, the tree, the reindeer, Santa Claus. But this we're going to go back and connect into that. How did we even start with monotheism? How did the polytheistic world and the monotheistic world combine? How did Christmas come out of one monotheistic or one pagan religion completely connecting to merge into something else? So the birth of monotheism, 722 BCE. The same time I told you that this whole thing was shifting in Palestine. There was an Assyrian conquest. The destruction of the northern Israel religious crisis begins. Now, this is so important because the Assyrians took over modern day Palestine / Israel. There were the 12 tribes of Israel lived in that area at that time. One of the tribes, the other 11 tribes did not like. So they hired the one tribe was not in alignment with the other 11 tribes. There was a river called the Jordan River. One tribe lived on the other side, the other 11 tribes lived on the other side. That tribe hired as what's the term? Mercenaries, the Assyrians, to go and invade the other 11 tribes and take them out. The Assyrians came into Israel and they took it over. They didn't come in as mercenaries. They came in as mercenaries and they took it over. And guess what they did with the tribe that hired them? They relocated them to the other side of the Assyrian Empire, known as modern-day Kashmir. They relocated them all the way down to Kashmir. And you know what that tribe of Israel was? It was the tribe of Mary and Joseph, 700 years before Mary and Joseph was born. And it was also the tribe in which Yeshua was born into. All happened dating back to around 700 BCE when they were relocated over there. So when Yeshua was born, there's a lot of evidence to suggest he was born in Kashmir, and the journey to, when he was going to be born, his parents, Mary and Joseph, they left Kashmir and made their way to the promised land, to Jerusalem, to give birth, or Bethlehem, to give birth to Jesus. And then we go into 715 to 686 BCE. Now here is when things start changing. There's a centralization of worship in Jerusalem. All of a sudden, all these shrines, there's shrines all around Palestine. There's shrines and literally markers for where these beings came and landed. There were like paleo contact rocks representing where these beings landed in the ancient past. They started being wiped out. One of the main gods that got wiped out is Asherah, the beautiful, benevolent god of the Pleiades. They were taking these shrines away, eradicating all history of them. This was a huge time of Yahweh worshiping. And this continued, and then it really solidified in 640 to 609 BCE. Josiah's monotheistic revolution. It's easier to maintain control when there's only one deity that has dictated you as the one ruler, aka Constantine in the Council of Nicaea. That's a good example. So Josiah outlawed all the other gods. So now they were worshiping, they were removing for the last 60, 70 years, they're removing all these shrines to these gods. But Josiah outlawed, you cannot worship Asherah anymore. You cannot worship El anymore. You cannot worship Baal anymore. You cannot worship Astarte, the goddess of love, war, and sexuality. Only Yahweh. Official monotheism was now created. But what was really messed up was all the benevolent stories of the other gods. Yahweh did not have any good stories about him. All the benevolent stories of the other gods were then rewritten with the word Yahweh instead of Asherah, instead of Baal, instead of all that. So Yahweh inherited all the stories of all the gods, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And now the Romans, let's start with here, the Israelites. As I was sharing, they forcibly abandoned paganism 700 to 600 BCE. And don't forget that these guys were living in Egypt. They were worshiping the same gods many ways. They were worshiping Isis, Ra Amen, all Egyptian gods. They developed a strict monotheistic identity after the reforms, censored and erased their whole polytheistic past, right? A rewriting of history. Then what happened is they became resistant to pagan symbolism and seasonal festivals. They started hating their past selves, not loving, liking, or appreciating, or having reverence or respect to any of their past stories. So let's fast forward now, 700 years later, 600 years later, Rome remained deeply pagan, of course, throughout the rise of Christianity. Lived in a world saturated with polytheism, temples, ritual, astrology, planetary gods, seasonal festivals. That was like all of it. The Israelites did not even worship birthdays. The Israelites in ancient Rome did not have birthdays. Obviously, everyone was born, but they never noted when someone was born. It was not a worship thing because they did everything the opposite of the Romans. And the Romans held reverence for all these days. So it's so entirely hilarious that we are actually having a day to represent Jesus' birthday when the in the time of Jesus, nobody actually cared about the day someone was born, which is why even to this day, people don't really know the exact day he was born. And of course, as we all know, their culture naturally merged with Christian mysticism. And the Romans absorbed pagan traditions into Christianity. The Romans become Christian. The major purpose for this was to incorporate a widely used pagan holiday to provide an incentive and excitement in those who were being forced to convert to Christianity. The Catholic Church did not like this holiday at all. And devout Christians, if you were a devout Christian, which most people were in the early days of Christianity, they refused to celebrate it. It was mainly celebrated by recently converted pagans. It was for them. Eventually, Catholicism did embrace it. However, the Protestants held out for much longer, and they absolutely hated the holiday. Pagan traditions and stories have created the foundation of Christmas as we know it. Stories from all over the pagan world began incorporating into this holiday. Some say that the empire became Christian Catholic only by name. That even though Constantine proclaimed Christianity as the national religion, in many ways it seems like they only became that by name. But true Christianity, true teachings of Yeshua weren't really incorporated, even to this day. They maintained the ancient beliefs and rituals. Now, even though the Catholic Church may have maintained pagan, somewhat demonic rituals, somewhat lustful oriented, somewhat disconnected, hedonistic rituals, we have to draw a parallel here. There is harmonious, beautiful pagan ancient culture, and then there's the duality of it, which is the dark expression of it. Rome just happened to go into the dark expression of it. Surrounding Rome, you had the Germanic tribes, you had the Viking tribes, the Norse tribes, you had the Gauls. These individuals also were very deeply pagan. Yes, many of them were warlike tribes because they had to protect themselves at that time, but their connection was way more in depth with the spirituality and esotericism that we're all into in this platform. Connection to earth, nature, all of this stuff. So the Israelites, of course, were consumed by Rome and oppressed by the Romans and observing all these hedonistic, lustful, crazy ways that they were expressing themselves. And they became resistant to paganism in general, including the beautiful parts of it. So instead of deleting old traditions, the Romans rebranded them. The old gods had new meanings. The old festivals became Christianized. The old symbols were repurposed. The winter solstice mattered deeply in Rome. The sun's rebirth, Sol Invictus. Agricultural cycles, all connected to this time of year. Christianity needed acceptance, so it blended and it accepted the evergreen decorations, the gift giving, the feasts, the candle rituals, the sun symbolism, the December timing. This, though, it truly left a disgust and resentment in many Christian sects for over 1,500 years. 1,500 years. A lot of people did not accept it, even into the 1700s. The Puritans in England overthrew King Charles in 1647. The Puritans and King Charles being the Catholic king. Among the first items of business after chopping off the monarch's head was to ban Christmas. Parliament decreed, because of the way Christmas was and the celebrations, they didn't like it. They said, you know what? We're going to change this day. Let's make it a day of fasting. Let's make it a day of humiliation so that you can repent for your sins. Look, and here's an artist's depiction of a sign that they would have back in New England around the 1700s. Public notice: the observation of Christmas had been deemed a sacrilege. The exchanging of gifts and greetings and dressing in fine clothing are similar to satanic practices and are hereby forbidden. Right? This is what the Christians had thought. Many Christians around the world have believed in it because they did not want to be associated, knowing the pagan roots. 1800s to the 1900s, that's when the pagan origins started getting forgotten. All right, now we're going to get into the fun stuff. Get me some interaction in the chat, guys. Love to know what you're thinking about what was just shared right here. And put in your energy into the field, and we're going to move into the origins of Christmas traditions. We'll begin with the origin of mistletoe. Baldur, Norse god, mother, Frigga, honored Baldur and asked all of nature to promise not to harm him. Unfortunately, in her haste, Frigga overlooked the mistletoe plan, so Loki, the resident trickster, took advantage of the opportunity and fooled Baldur's blind twin, Hoorah, into killing him with a spear made of mistletoe. Baldur was later restored to life. So that was the origin of why we use mistletoe in Christmas. Christmas trees and presents. This part is my favorite part. And when I first learned about this stuff, and I did the first presentation 6 years ago, but I knew about this for years before that. This part was pretty much what I'm going to share in the next 4 to 5 slides was pretty much all I knew. And then more and more just unfolded. Guys, there is no other holiday in the whole of the world that exists that has blended so many ancient civilizations and cultures into one day. There is none. And we're going to get into it. And you'll see how many different cultures, how many different beings, how many different gods are all combined into this day. And then, even though the southern hemisphere doesn't have a winter solstice, they then adopted the traditions of the northern hemisphere because they became predominantly Christian. The use and purpose of the Christmas tree dates back to the times of shamans and mystics in pagan Europe before the conquest of Rome. During the solstice, shamans would collect Amanita muscaria mushrooms on December 21st and leave them to dry on branches of the Christmas trees. Similar to this little slide here at the bottom, this image. So these mushrooms were psychedelic, they're toxic, but they are less lethal when they're dried out. Conveniently, they grow most commonly under pine trees, aka evergreen trees, because the spores travel exclusively on pine seeds. So these mushrooms would grow underneath the trees. When they would sprout, 90% of a mushroom's life is underground, the fungi. The last 4, 5, 10% of the mushroom's life is when it becomes the mushroom. Actually, did you know that the mushroom is actually what's the word? The factulation? Let me see if I get the word here. Fatulation of a fungi. So when it dies, it basically lets out gas, and then its expression in those last moments is the creation of the mushroom. So that would happen, and then the spores would then be released from the mushroom, and then the mushroom spores would only be carried on the pine trees, which are our Christmas trees. The original gift was the mushroom. That's where gift giving came from, one of the many ways, actually. And then drying these mushrooms on the trees because they were wet. A lot of times they were in snow. It was during the winter time. When they were picked, they needed to dry out, so they were hung on the trees. That's where we get our ornaments from. The tree of life and the Christ consciousness. Yeah, exactly. So what would happen when you take these mushrooms? You would climb up the tree of life, the evergreen tree, another symbol. The evergreen tree represents the chakra system. The angel or the star on top of the tree is your crown chakra. You would eat the mushroom, you would travel up the tree of life, and then you would achieve Christ consciousness through the cerebral fluid called the claustrum inside of your brain that will then activate your pineal gland, giving you enlightenment, giving you deep reflection. Giving you deep reflection when? The 3 days of darkness of the year, the 3 darkest days, the best time of year to have that deep reflection, right before you go into the spring season when you have the expansion. It's the hibernation before the expansion. So while the mushrooms would hang to dry, the deer would come and consume them. And they would get high off the fungi. And they would urinate themselves because they were so freaking high. The shaman and other members of the tribe would drink the snow with the deer's urine. This is the origin of the word getting pissed. Getting pissed came from the terms that were utilized back in the day for when a shaman would drink the urine of a deer after the deer would actually eat the mushroom. This is believed, that's what it said right there. I just read that decreasing GABA takes the filter off and allows us to see reality more clearly. Mushrooms will do this for you. Yes, I agree. So Rudolph is the deer ingesting mushrooms. The reason why Rudolph has a red nose is because it has been eating the Amanita muscaria mushroom. Now, when you would take this mushroom juice and drink it, or you would ingest these mushrooms, now we have the psychedelic apparitions, the gnome beings, the elemental beings, the flying reindeer. The flying reindeer comes from many different traditions, all combined in one, all resulting in a flying reindeer. And we'll get into some of those in a moment when we talk about the man himself, Santa Claus. Here we go. So, who is Santa? All right, I got to put this on for this. Who is this guy? After doing this presentation, guys, I've now come to the conclusion that Santa is real. He is a guy. It exists. Santa exists. So here we go. The Santa equation. Strap on your seatbelts on this cosmic Santa sleigh, because this is the deepest part of all of the presentation. You need not look any further than Santa Claus to really go deep into the connection to paganism. Santa was one of the originals. The original Santa was the shaman collecting the mushrooms. Wizard Merlin's hat, shaman hat. Mushrooms were the ornaments and the gifts spread to the village. The reindeers were the way of transportation for the mushrooms in his big sack. The original Santa was commonly depicted as more of a gnome-like little man, often skinny and a little scary. But wait, there is more. Yes, Stephanie's saying that Amanita loses some of their poison when ingested by animals. It's not as toxic. I think I had a slide on that. I took a slide out, but yes, that is so true. So the dark helpers of winter. Before Santa Claus became a gift giver, we know and we love. Winter folklore across Europe featured dark companion spirits who judged behavior, enforced moral order, and initiated children into societal values. This was a time of great initiation. And we have to talk about some of the precursors of Santa, who are known as the dark helpers of winter. Let me make the slide a little bigger for you guys. If you can see, hopefully you can see that better. We have Krampus, Alpine regions, Austria, Bavaria, Balsamical, Germanic, Pennsylvania Dutch, Hans Trapp, Alsace, France, Germany, Perchta, Frau Holly, Alpine, and also Germanic regions. And this was their role. This was their role. Punish excess laziness and moral imbalance. Reward discipline and integrity. Appear during the darkest days of the year, 3 days of darkness. Function as initiatory archetypes, not villains. They were not villains. The dark helpers of winters would walk with the light bringer. This is before Christianity, before Jesus. Who is Jesus? The light bringer. Winter was not just festive, it was confrontational. It was not only physically confrontational, the dark, cold winters back in the day, but also it was a time of deep reflection, inner work. How have you been in the community? Have you been a part of it? Have you been lazy? Have you had a moral imbalance? Have you been a good person with discipline and integrity? with those that you love and your friends and people around you in your community. These were initiatory archetypes, not villains. And why? Why did the Dark Helpers exist? These Dark Helpers, this was a psychological initiation and shadow integration time of year. They were not evil, they were necessary. The shadow self, the Jungian archetype. Consequences of imbalance. If you live a life of imbalance, these things can happen to you. Natural law during scarcity and darkness. They taught children, connection to children, they taught children responsibility and restraint. They reinforced community ethics. They prepared society for hardship and survival. They balanced joy with accountability. And then, of course, we have the Christian suppression. So this is what happened during this time. There was so many parallels, so many connections to Yeshua and this time of year and the Lightbringer. But then the Christians started making some changes when they adopted this holiday. The Dark Helpers were demonized. The fear-based morality replaced initiation. Instead of these beings being these beings that are bringing up the darkest parts of yourself so you can look and reflect on yourself so you can make a positive change, it became fear-based. If you don't do this, this will happen to you. Shadow archetypes were externalized as evil. The shadow was not integrated. Christianity, pre-Christianity Christmas, integration of the shadow. I mean, there's no better way to, there probably is, but there is one of the best ways, I would say, is the proper use of psychedelics, including mushrooms, which is probably the most. Amanita muscaria is definitely way stronger than psilocybin mushrooms, but it's that connection to the earth, that purging, that reset of the body, right? The shadow was not integrated, it was exiled. And then the wild hunt, more beings now, right? So we spoke here about the dark helpers, and then the wild hunt. Those were some people. We spoke about 3 or 4 individuals there. We got Krampus, Belsnickel, Handstrap, Percha, Frau Holly, right? And then there was also the wild hunt, the spirits who ride the winter sky. The spirits who ride the winter sky. Some leaders of the hunt, Odin, Norse and Germanic. Odin and Woden, Norse and Germanic. Hey, hey, I'm doing a webinar. Come here.
No.
Hold on. We gotta take a little pause. Come here. Come here. I gotta go back on the webinar. Alright. I'll be down in a bit, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I want you.
You want me, but you gotta be quiet. You gonna be quiet? Okay. Okay, only if you're quiet, okay? If you're talk, then you have to go outside.
Oh,
Okay?
okay.
Alright. Alright. So we have deep breath in. Reset. I might take a moment. Okay, I'm gonna go take him to his parents. Hold on. Be right back, guys. Take a little break. Santa's little helper.
Papa Boogie.
Bye. All right. Let's get back into it. The Wild Hunt. The spirits who ride the winter sky. Okay. We spoke about the Dark Helpers. This is where we get more Santa connections. Odin, Woden, Norse Germanic, Herne, the Hunter. You know, I love to talk about these names because I feel there's so much symbolism or frequency in the names that these beings aren't spoke about enough. And these are our ancient connections. These are our ancestral connections. And it's so interesting that when a lot of people become fundamentally religious or they become in one religion that they think their way is the only way, there's a there's a disconnect from our ancestry, right? What Christian in the world had a Christian relative 3,000 years ago? Zero. Who were the ancestors? When we disconnect from our ancestry, we can disconnect from the history and the story and the archetypes of what brought us into this world, what made us feel so human and connected, and the stories that literally created civilization and society as we know it. So when we say these words, that's why I have all these names of these different beings here, is that when we say them, it's like a connection to our collective ancestry and the shared story across humanity, across the world. We have Herne the Hunter, the Celtic and the British. We have Persia, Holda, Alpine regions. And the core themes, one of the core themes is liminal times between worlds, which is really interesting because if you think deep enough, not even too deep, the Santa story is about a liminal being that exists between worlds, bringing gifts from another realm. The return of the ancestors, the judgment and fate, death before rebirth. Death before rebirth. And the connection to Santa? Odin rides an 8-legged horse. There's 8 reindeer, and Rudolph became a separate one that was actually added in 1939 by Coca-Cola. So there was actually only 8 reindeer up until 1939. And Odin rides an 8-legged horse. Children left offerings in boots, and now we have children was leaving offerings to Odin, to whatever being in their boots, so that they would be blessed for the new year, for the years to come, for the spring. And then it reverted to stockings, and then Santa putting gifts in the stocking. Who was these beings? These were sky traveling winter visitors. And then Santa is the softened echo of a god who once ruled the storm. Oh man, teacher, you just gave away my next point, but the good one. You were on point. I was going to do, well, actually, let's see anyway. We're going to do a pop quiz in a moment. Christian reinterpretation. The wild hunt became demons. The sky gods became devils. The ancestral spirits became hellish apparitions. The spirits became hellish apparitions. But all the imagery survived disguised. Because even though this connection went further back before Rome, they took what they had saw as Rome and went the opposite direction. And as all of you probably know, humanity has a duality problem. The way to fix something is that we overcorrect by going on to the other side instead of finding the truth somewhere in between, in the middle. It's an overcorrection, right? Politics is a great example of that. Now, Krampus, he was the son of Hel, the Norse god of the underworld. With the spread of Christianity, Krampus became associated with Christmas, despite efforts by the Catholic Church to ban him. Krampus is central in European folklore, particularly in Alpine regions. He is often depicted as being horned, anthropomorphic creature, contrasting with a benevolent figure of Saint Nicholas. Contrast. In traditional folklore, Krampus is said to accompany Saint Nicholas during Christmas season. While Saint Nicholas rewards well behaved, he punishes that. So it's like the duality of the two both walk together. Now, I love detours. And I couldn't do this presentation many years ago without thinking, is there a connection to the elemental world here? The elemental kingdom? Especially because when we look at the whole Middle Earth kind of reality, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, we look at the shamans and the wizards and the mushrooms at those times, the gnomes, the connection to gnomes, the reindeer, it has this very elemental feel to it. So, who are these elemental beings? There are four categories of elementals, which are gnomes, undines, sylphs, and salamanders. These correspond to the four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. The concept of elementals draws from several much older traditions in mythology religion. Common threads can be found in folklore, animism, and anthropomorphism. Now, when you ingest mushrooms, a lot of times people see these elemental beings. And here is some images of the Smurfs, right? So, what does this look like to you? The Smurfs are the shamans. They're wearing the Santa hat. They're the gnomes. And what are the Smurfs living inside of? Amanita muscaria mushrooms, right? The whole Smurf show, the series of the Smurfs, was all connected to the shamans of the ancient time, the gnome-like beings, and also the connection to psychedelic mushrooms. These beings I spoke about extensively in channeling information. They're tapped into the consciousness and live in harmony with the earth. It is said by many people that they shifted into a different dimension or a dimension between dimensions to escape from human violence and prejudice when humanity started devolving in consciousness. Some people say that when Atlantis fell, that elemental beings existed during that time as well. And then soon after that, they began phasing out of our reality because humanity was falling in such a lower level of consciousness that they could not coexist with us anymore. Like Lord of the Rings, like Harry Potter. A good example in Lord of the Rings is the Elfin Kingdom. If you remember in Lord of the Rings, they speak about a time where all these beings used to live together. And do you know the orcs, the evil guys in Lord of the Rings? They used to be elves, right? They used to be, and the leader was the grand elf, like a beautiful divine being that then fell into a lower level of consciousness and then started cloning himself in all these other orcs. And but do you remember, I think it might have been the first Lord of the Rings, when they'd been speaking about the time where the elves used to live with humans. They're going through a boat. I forget which one it is, might even be in the series, but they're going in a boat to go visit the Elfin Kingdom. And they go through this ocean, and then they go to these pearly, beautiful golden gates where it's literally like a portal going into another dimensional reality where now they're in the Elfland, where everything is more vibrant, beautiful. And that's the symbolization of the elemental kingdom being a phased out reality that coexists on our planet, but is in a phased out dimension. So even within there, there's all these like metaphors and symbolism to represent that they now live in a different world and we need to go through some sort of initiation or some sort of portal in order to be able to be in the same vibration as them and interact with them. When you ingest psychedelic mushrooms, they are connected to the consciousness of the planet. Mushrooms is a earth plant, is an earth fungus, earth psychedelic. Your environment can seem like it's alive and breathing. Everything is alive, kind of like you're living in the Elfin Kingdom. This is where the crossover between the shaman and the gnome occurred. The gnome is the shaman. The gnome is the shaman. And the shaman is Santa. merging together to bring consciousness to the community and a time of deep reflection. Because Santa, the shaman, would go get the mushrooms, put it in his sack, go and deliver it to the community. So Santa is real. But how does it all converge? Bringing it all together now. Santa Claus preserves shamanic symbolism stripped of its original context. Shamanic symbolism stripped of its original context, aka Santa. Ancient parallels, red and white colors, same as the Amanita mascara. Enters through the roof, yurts and smoke holes. Gifts from another realm, shamanic offerings. Reindeer, the animals that eat Amanita. Flying, ultra states of consciousness. Elves, the helper spirits to distribute the mushrooms to the community. Santa, guys, is not a lie. He is an ancient memory encoded in myth. An ancient memory coded in myth. Wow, isn't it amazing how this story for thousands of years ago still exists in such a predominant, beautiful level? Well, I guess that's relative, but still exists in such a strong way without the soul of it. We disconnected from that part, but the stories are still there. He is an ancient memory encoded in myth. And Teresa is saying here, let's just make a note here because I love learning about the Basque culture. Teresa saying in the Basque culture, we have Olent Zero, who is a charcoal mart that comes down from mountains to towns to bring gifts to the children. Xmas Eve. Love it. From initiation, if you guys have not seen yet, we've really been talking about this initiation time of year. Especially the whole child connection is the rite of passage from childhood to adulthood. As Christianity spread, psychedelic knowledge was suppressed. Shamanism labeled pagan or demonic. Alta states were then condemned. Myths became children's stories, but the symbols survived. And what remains today? Christmas trees, elves, flying reindeer, red and white Santa, gifts from the unseen realms, right? So we got the elves as well, like I was sharing, which are the Chris Santa's helpers. Come on now, right? Come on now. It's just so interesting to see all of these connections. Now we're gonna go for a home run with the science of Santa, because not only is Santa all these ancient myths, there's a science behind the claws of Santa Claus. The claustrum. There's a fluid substance formed in the brain. It's the precursor to the spinal fluid that travels down the spine. Your brain does its thing, it creates this spinal fluid. The spinal fluid goes down your chakra system, down your spine, activates your chakras, which is an electrical current that then fuels all of your organs. That's the science behind it. It was known in ancient times as the Christ oil. Hello, another Christ connection. Also known as the cerebral spinal fluid. That's what we call it today. And in ancient Greece, they called this fluid Christos, another Christ word. The fluid goes up and down the spine and has been related as a symbol of Santa Claus going up and down the chimney. The fluid travels up and down the spine like Santa Claus, the claustrum, up and down the chimney. Here's a scientific study on the claustrum. The claustrum is a thin, irregular, sheet-like neuronal structure hidden beneath the inner surface of the neocortex in the general region of the insula. Basically, it's just saying it's in your brain. Its function is enigmatic. Its anatomy is quite remarkable in that it receives input from almost all regions of the cortex and projects back to almost all regions of the cortex. So it receives signals from all of your brain and then it projects back. It's nothing else in your body does that kind of relay communication. Speculating on its possible relationship to the processes that give rise to integrated conscious percepts, propose mechanisms that enable information to travel widely within the claustrum. So it's basically saying that not only does it do that, it then takes that information and it takes it up and down your spine, providing information to whatever it's doing up and down your spine. Now, metaphysically, your spine is connected to your chakra system, so it's relaying information from your brain to your chakras, is what I get from this. And I had to save, not that we're done with the presentation, because we are not. We still got 20 slides left. But I had to save this Santa Claus part for last. Because actually, it's interesting. I think I said one other part was my favorite part, but no, I got to say this one is. This is something that it's my own theory that I think I've done enough research to kind of feel like it's a fact at this point. Saturn and Kronos. Saturn and Kronos. Saturn is the lord of time and the golden age. Who here has heard of the Saturn moon matrix? The signal between the moon and Saturn that then creates a frequency around the earth, allowing us to live in a third-dimensional linear space. Right? Saturn moon matrix. The moon keeping us at this angle, this tilt, assisting us with linear time. Saturn projecting this frequency to the moon, creating this grid around the earth. Saturn also having a symbol of a cube, the cube symbolizing third-dimensional linear time. The cube also connecting to the cube at Mecca in Saudi Arabia, that's also a symbolization of Saturn, right? Because Judaism and Islam are Saturn-based religions. I know, I saw that too. One of the authors' name was Christoph. The last thing I saw when I was moving was that. I never saw that before. Saturn is also associated with structures. Cube, structure, linear, right? So there's a whole component of this matrix that has a lot of symbolization with Saturn. And Kronos is the same as Saturn. That's just the Greek term. The Greek god was Kronos, the Roman god was Saturn. Lord of Time and the Golden Age, which is also very interesting because we have this Golden Age connection, which is supposedly where we're heading, right? To a Golden Age. In Roman mythology, Saturn, Greek Kronos, was the god of time, cycles, and ages, the ruler of the Golden Age, a mythical era of abundance and equality. Well, I think all of us here don't think it was mythical, believe it was real, and we're going back there. Associated with abundance, agriculture, harvest, death, and rebirth. A deity always honored at the darkest time of year. Saturnalia. Now here we have the deeper layer of why the Romans incorporated Christmas time around this time. Actually, all of them as deep as the next one, to be quite honest. But Saturnalia was a celebration happening around this time. December 17th to the 23rd. Rome's most beloved festival. And during this time, the social order was reversed. Masters served servants. This is how hedonistic they were in Rome. That during this time, the servants were allowed to pretend and treat the masters like they were slaves. You know how they say absolute power corrupts absolutely? And also how, like, when you have enough power, that's when people start getting bored of whatever they're able to do and they start looking for even more sadistic kind of things. It's kind of like that's what actually happened in Rome. They would have let their slaves treat them like crap. Maybe some of them allow themselves to be whipped. You know, like the masters became the servants. During this time, it was a festival, so the servants would love it. They would wait for it. It was also implemented to enforce slavery. Well, how does this holiday reinforce slavery? Well, I will say Almost every holiday in the world is there to reinforce the slavery that the world is under right now, because it gives you a day or two to process and blow off steam so you don't revolt. That's what this day was for. The Romans perfected it. They allowed the servants to become the masters, blowing off steam, thereby initiating and solidifying slavery even more the days that would follow after this holiday. There was a lot of gift giving, there was a lot of feasting, laughter, misrule, masks, think of like Eyes Wide Shut on crack, right? Like in Rome. Suspension of normal time and hierarchy. Hierarchy was suspended, except the Romans wanted to be slaves. Treat me like a slave. Saturnalia was ritualized collapse of linear time. Okay. This is all so many dots, guys. There's so many dots in this presentation that it's not even countable, to be quite honest. Saturnalia was ritualized collapse. Yeah. Want to come in? Yeah, come in. Saturnalia was a ritualized collapse of linear time, returning society briefly to the Golden Age. And then what is the Santa-Saturn connection? Connected to the god and planet Saturn. It's not a coincidence, just like Krishna, Christ. It's not just a coincidence that Santa and the word Saturn sound the same. Saturn and Santa connected to the god and planet Saturn, and also the Roman god Saturnalia. Saturnalia was, as I was sharing, a holiday in honor of Saturn, beginning in the week leading up to the winter solstice and continued for a full month. Saturnalia was a hedonistic time, food and drink were plentiful, and the normal social order was turned upside down. Okay, so here's the pop quiz for you guys. What is, okay, I want some interaction here, okay? What is the one thing that Santa Claus does that only someone who is the ruler of time can do? Okay? What is one thing that Santa Claus does that only someone who is the ruler of time can do? Whoever gets this gets bragging rights for all of Christmas. I'm going to wait until I get some answers before we continue. Yep. Exactly. Travels all over the world on the same night, right? This is how these stories come about. And who is the god of time? Saturn, Kronos, the Matrix. Is Santa a modern version of the god Saturn, aka Kronos? Saturn governs ages and cycles, right? This is so deeper than time. This is cycles. This is beyond linear time. Cycles in general. Santa visits all children in one night beyond linear time. Saturn is also the judge and the giver, just like Santa. Saturn judged humanity during cyclical ages. At the end of every cycle, the Yuga cycles, there was a judgment, a reflection, but an inner reflection, an inner judgment, a next progression. Santa judges behavior, naughty or nice. Saturn's reign, abundance without labor. Santa embodies effortless gifts, generosity, equality, abundance, and the winter association as well. Saturnalia occurred at the winter solstice. Santa appears at the same cosmic threshold. But let's even go deeper, guys. Believe it or not, there's a deeper level of all of this. Saturn equals Satan. Whoops, I did a little typo there. Saturn equals Santa equals Satan. Saturn equals Santa equals Satan. Now we're going to talk about the creation of the Christian devil. Pagan gods were demonized. Saturn's darker aspects, time, death, limitation, were reframed as evil. The horned imagery of Saturnian figures merged into Christian demonology. King James was a huge component of this, which was around the 1600s, which was also around the time they were just about to accept Christianity. Right at the end, that's a whole presentation on its own. Meanwhile, Santa preserved the benevolent traits of Saturn. Satan absorbed the fear-based aspects of Saturn. So there was a duality, a split of the Saturn and of the higher vibe and the lower vibe. If you guys are in this world and watch people like Laura Eisenhower, different people on my platform, we did a whole conference, an 8-hour conference just on Saturn, right? It's called the Saturn and Elohim conference. And in this conversation that we had there, so many people talk about Saturn being evil, but everything within cosmos is inherently neutral, but it's given a different polarity based on the level of consciousness that you're at. So the same thing goes for Saturn. Saturn represented the duality of both aspects, the light bearer and the winter, the dark winter. And there were two aspects that was split into two. We have the Santa, the benevolent being, right? Also connected to Christ, Yeshua, and his grace upon the world. Then we have the satanic connection, which then became evil. But originally, Satan was not evil. It was the shadow part of ourselves. And as my friend Oliver, he is he's a scholar of Aramaic. And in Aramaic, Satan comes from the word satana, which means the illusion, the illusion. So the origin of even the word Satan that came from satana, that came from Saturn, only meant the illusion. And there's another dot that's connecting here about how the Saturn and Moon working together creates this matrix grid that then reinforces an illusion upon us that we're now living within. But is this illusion evil? Like then became a Christianity? Or is this an illusion, a self-imposed holographic simulation for us to be able to experience ourselves in ways that we weren't able to without it? That's the deeper question. So, introducing the devil. Everything from Rome's ancient past was demonic to many Christians. Due to their pagan roots, the light side of paganism, such as the connection to nature, plants, herbalism, psychedelics, began to be shunned away from the new emerging civilization. The god of Saturn split into the dark side and the light side. Christianity went and demonized, it didn't get rid of the dark side, it demonized the dark side. Not all of it, because there was Gnosticism, there was the Cathars, there were the Essenes, there were the Knights Templar, there was the Mary Magdalene traditions, right? It split into many sects that didn't all disconnect from it, but in general. And then we have, of course, the demonization of the dark rather than a part of ourselves, only focusing on the light side of it all and being afraid of our own shadow, afraid of our own shadow. So what does this season represent? Not only from everything I shared there, but just from even the sun in the sky, the light triumph over darkness, the duality. This season, this time, it's so awesome that we're doing it today, which is the last day of the solstice, the 3 days after the solstice, which is the 3 days of darkness, is ending today. Tomorrow is when the sun gets reborn. The duality of the shadow and the light. So are you saying that we should embrace the darkness? That's a whole presentation on its own, because you can't just like blanket statement embracing the darkness, because there's two different types of darkness. There's inherent evil darkness, and then there's the own shadow version of ourselves that come from traumatic experiences that then creates darkness, sadness, depression within ourselves that we're able to reflect and integrate with, right? And then there's the actual inherent stuff that you consider really bad attributes of humanity, right? And it's not about even looking at that as evil. It's almost like, how do you rehabilitate the darkness? How you rehabilitate the evil? How far do you have to go back to see who the original person was that was originally wounded? How do we heal the original wounds rather than just put a band-aid on top of the issues, right? We did, just a side note, we did a whole conference called the Darkness and Light Conference around a few months ago. It was free. It's on our portal2ascension.org if you sign up. And there we explore, like, what does it really mean to integrate with the darkness? What is darkness? You know, it's not even like something that we can just say, do we embrace the darkness? Because there's so much more to what that even represents. Like, for example, the black hole, space, that's darkness, right? The duality came from that. Polarity came from the duality. Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's a bigger conversation is what I'm getting at. So Santa equation exposed. This is the final stretch of the Santa. I'm from England. We never called him Santa Claus. We called him Father Christmas, right? I think in the U.S. you probably know him as Santa, as Father Christmas as well, but Father Christmas is what we call him all over Europe. Santa Claus is the Father Christmas, the father of the Christ Mass. Father Christmas is the father of time. The father of time is Kronos, the god of time. The father of time is the god of Saturn. So is an equation I put together connecting the dots basically. But Father Christmas, Father of Time, Kronos, Saturn, the gods of time. Santa, as we shared, Odin, all these different beings. I can't even pronounce the names. So many. I think we went through like 8 or 9 of them. Santa has represented many gods, gnomes, shamans, and actual historical figures, and possibly even more. This is only one evolution of Santa. And Georgia, if you're still in the room, you're asking if there'll be a replay. This is available all the time. You can come back to this channel and watch it. So yes, there is a replay. The Christian Santa. Now we gotta, how did it become Christianized? Saint Nick, a Turkish cardinal in the 14th century, was known for his kindness to children. This was the immediate connection when Christians began adopting the holiday. However, all elements of Santa, including the pants, the hat, the bag, and more, originated from ancient pagan shamanic stories. And then in the 20th century, we have a happy-go-lucky Santa Claus because of Coca-Cola. In the 20th century, there was a rebranding of Santa Claus. He went from a gnome-like being to a chubby, happy, jolly guy that we all know. The demonization of the ancient ways. Thus said the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. King James Bible. King James, instrumental in demonology. He literally wrote the book on demonology. It was called Demonology. Thanks to him in the 1600s, we have the devil on the level that we have him as now. King James is one of the most manipulated versions of the Bible, which is crazy because so many people love expressing how King James Bible is their favorite Bible, but it's the most manipulated version. It took a front seat. The devil took a front seat in Christianity at that point. It was that was right when all the herbalists and people that were nature guardians were shunned and considered witches. This King James is the reason why we had the witch trials all of Europe and all those witches burned at the stake that I'm sure many of you tuning into this had a past life as a witch. This guy was the reason. And even Salem was not for another 100, 150 years later, something like that. But the Salem witch trials all came because of King James. And you can see here, thus said the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, right? He was adamantly against anything connected to the ancient pagan ways, including herbalism, connection to plants, ancestral spirits. And I'll give you a little story time here because I love telling stories. If you want to know how it happened, and I will do a whole presentation just on King James at one point and connect it to the witch trials because it's such an interesting story. But King James went to, where did he go? Norway, Denmark. He was in Denmark. So around 1600s, King James was in Denmark, and he was at a conference, just like we do, except the conference was on the devil. Demonology conference, it was called. He comes back paranoid. He's on his boat coming back to England, and to Scotland, because he was the king of Scotland. He was not the king of England yet. He's on his way back to Scotland, and there is a huge storm, and he almost dies in the storm. He lands back in Scotland, and he's adamant. Oh my God, the devil did it. The witches did it. These witches did it. These people that worship this ancestral spirits, the people that worship nature, they're the ones that did this to me. So he begins questioning all these people within his kingdom, thinking that they're witches. Now we start the witch trials. And then I forget who was the queen. I think it was a queen. Whoever was the monarch of England dies. And because that monarch died, King James became the king of the whole of United Kingdom. If it wasn't for this monarch dying, King James would never have been able to been the ruler of the whole of UK, right? Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England. And this was right at the same time as the colonies in the US were being populated. So then King James now had the rule of all of England, thereby imposed his Protestant and Puritan values on demonology onto the whole of the masses. And then that belief system migrated with the people that went to the US, thereby taking the witch trials and all of that to the US, which is why we had the witch trials over here in the Americas. So let's go back. 300 years after the resurrection of Christ, we have the Council of Nicaea. So for a long time, I was even parroting the wrong information about this. A few years ago, I was like, I've learned so much stuff doing these events, but a lot of times I'm saying what other people have told me. So I started reading these books myself and finding out my own information. And this is what I found out about the Council of Nicaea. There was a debate. This is why the Council of Nicaea happened, okay? Christianity was about to take hold. Constantine saw it as a threat that he needed to incorporate it, or otherwise he would be outed and ousted and not appreciated by the masses that are converting to Christianity. So he said, there's a debate over who Christ was. There were two different views. One was he was the Son of God, or he was an enlightened human that was connected to God. That's what the Son of God represented, an enlightened human, kind of like Buddha, right? Or he was the actual incarnation of God. Those were the two beliefs, and they wanted to have a debate at the Council of Nicaea to figure out what it was. The belief that he was an enlightened. So what's really crazy is the correct belief won. He was an enlightened human, like the Buddha, not God himself. But then, even though that's what the won within the Council of Nicaea, the popular belief on the streets still remained that he was God himself incarnated. So whatever was the conclusion of the Council of Nicaea never took hold. And then God himself incarnated became the one. So which is why now a lot of times when you say he's God and he's a son of God and God himself, it's said almost like, oh no, Yeshua is God. That's why we don't worship idols because we're Christian. But you're worshiping Jesus and he's not God. Oh no, no, no. Jesus is God himself. Also the Son of God. It's like a delusional paradox because technically we're all gods, we're also all sons of gods. But in this aspect, it was an external reflection of that reality rather than an eternal realization, if that makes any sense. So the belief that he was God incarnated, which is why a lot of Christians, if you really know the books, you're going to know that he was God. But it's not like he's a human like you and I, where he was able to tap into a level of consciousness and realize his God self. That's pretty much what it was. It's more like, oh no, he's God and we're not God. God came down to visit us and we're not God. That was the belief that took hold. And then also, yeah, there was hundreds of gospels at this point, and only a few of them was selected, right? Many of them were taken out. The Book of Love, the Book of Reincarnation, and more. The Book of Judas, talking about how Judas was in on it. It was not until the 5th century that all the different churches came 500 years after the invent of Christianity, 200 years after the Christianization of the Roman Empire, did a basic agreement on what Christianity really was come about. All right, everyone. Let's all take a deep breath together. Let's take a deep breath together. Deep, deep, deep breath. Take a little sip of my matcha, my Christmas drink. Let's tie it all together and end this presentation in the next few slides. Probably be here for another 10 minutes together. Let's tie it all together with New Year's Day. New Year's Day. Okay. New Year's Day and Christmas is super connected. There's a quote from Theodore H. Gaster in his book New Year. There's scarcely a people, ancient or modern, savage or civilized, which has not observed it in one form or another. Yet no other festival has been so celebrated on so many different dates or in so many seemingly different ways. When we talk about New Year's, we need to talk about how the calendar was created. So here's a little info on the Julian calendar history. Christmas has been closely connected to New Year's Day since the days of Julius Caesar, right? Saturnalia, the worship of the solstice, New Year's Day being changed by the Romans. So, of course, they're going to keep that connection together because what is the solstice? Sun worshiping day. What is New Year's Day? Sun worshiping day. Rotating around the sun. What is both of those? An honoring of linear time. An honoring of linear time. Because linear time is completely connected to our position in relation to our sun. We could be in the position of Mars instead of here, and we would have linear time, but linear time would be completely different as we know it today over here because of our distance from the sun. The original date for New Year's was March 25th. We can partly thank the Roman king Numa Pompilius in 715 to 673 BCE, same time monotheism was coming on the scene, revised the January and replaced March as the first month, but it was not widely accepted or implemented. Even though 700 BCE, he had done a shift there, it was not implemented. Since January was named after Janus, the Roman god of all beginnings, March celebrated Mars, the god of war. However, there's evidence that January 1st was not made the official star of the Roman Empire until 153 BCE, 600 years after it was introduced by a Roman king before the empire even began. But then in 46 BCE, right, eerily close to the time of Yeshua's life, Julius Caesar introduced more changes. through the Julian calendar, as it became known, retained January 1st as the year's opening date. With the expansion of the Roman Empire, the use of the Julian calendar also spread. It became clear that the Julian calendar required additional changes due to miscalculation of leap years. So, because of this shift, dates would not sync up properly. Events would happen in the wrong season because they didn't have leap years. So then we have Pope Gregory introducing a revised calendar in 1582. The Gregorian calendar restored January 1st as the start of the year, but countries like Italy, France, Spain didn't accept it. The Protestant Orthodox nations were also slow to adopt it. In ancient Mesopotamia, New Year celebrated the triumph of Marduk over the chaos and the destruction of Tiamat. In ancient Egypt, they celebrated the New Year connected to Sirius, the brightest star in night sky. Usually mid-July, Wepet Renmet means opening of the year. The New Year was seen as a time of rebirth and rejuvenation. Discoveries at the Temple of Mut showed that the first month of the year played a host to a festival of drunkenness, tied to the myth of Sekhmet, the war goddess, who planned to kill all of humanity until the sun god Ra tricked her into drinking herself unconscious. So it's the story of the sun coming back after tricking Sekhmet into being unconscious. This is all sun worshipping. We can track the sun worship ritual to Mesopotamia 4,000 years ago, Christmas, solstice celebration, sun worshipping days, Amun Ra, the Egyptian sun god in Egypt, sun worshipping. So obviously, we've been worshiping the sun for quite some time. And the sun god became the Son of God. So the sun god became the Son of God. And as I shared in the beginning of this presentation, we had all these ancient cultures before sun worshipping religions that worshipped different types of planetary bodies, including the black hole, moon, Venus, Saturn, right? And then we ended up on the sun. So here's my little theory that I'm just coming up with right now. We bounced around all over our solar system, worshiping different planets. Sometimes we worship the sun and other planets, like in Egypt. And then we almost all coalesced into a different version of sun worshiping or Saturn worshiping in the guise of the sun. Yes, actually, Jordan Maxwell was the first person that got me into all this back in 2001. He was the first person I ever saw, Jordan Maxwell. And so then they all became sun worshiping religions for the most part. And now, is it almost like that's the central sun? That's the center part of our solar system. What comes after the sun worshiping? Even though there was sun worship that have been the main god, different gods worship different people worship different gods at different times. They would rise, they would fall. Even though we may think polytheistic civilizations may have worshipped the sun, we worship the sun now more than ever, but we've given archetypal names of actual people that may have existed, like Jesus, to these people, to these gods. I mean, these planetary bodies, like the sun. The majority of people are blind to this fact. How many Christians believe that they're actually worshiping the sun when they worship organized Christianity? Not Christ, but the organized Christianity. Well, that's idol worshiping. That's pagan, right? Why would they do that? The celebration of New Year's is never once commanded in the Bible. Jesus and the apostles never observed it. Moses forbade it. Why? They forbade the worshiping of a planetary body, not because the planetary body isn't something beautiful and great and amazing that's assisting you, because they were trying to show you the kingdom of heaven is within you. You don't need to worship these external things. You need to prepare for the light within. So what are the things that you could ponder from today, right? Will there be a day where we stop worshiping sun religions and stopping sun cults? And will solstice celebrations and New Year's Day celebrations go because we no longer worship the sun like that? Or will we become more conscious of what we've been doing and become more intentional? Because the key is here. There's two, in my opinion, there's two different variations. There's reverence and gratitude or worship. Worship is, I am not good enough. I am lesser than you. Please help me. Gratitude and reverence is, wow, thank you for the beautiful rays that you provide us. Thank you for the life that we have on earth. You're such a beautiful divine emanation of consciousness. I appreciate you. I love you. Let's move on with life. Right? So will we go from the worshiping to the reverence? Will it add more to the season? Because we can become more intentional with it. Right? The intention, the soul, the consciousness is gone. A lot of different things have been stripped away from it. Instead of worshiping the sun, maybe we'll give reverence and gratitude, like I just shared, and not base our existence on the worship. What comes after you worship Venus? What comes after you worship Saturn? What comes after you worship Jupiter? What comes after you worship the sun? What comes after you stop worshiping linearity and linear time? That's what we've been doing. Our worshiping to the sun, even manifesting in Christianity, even manifesting in Santa and Saturn and all that, is a watered down version of a deep connection to linearity. What comes after that? You can go back further in the past enough to see yourself. The galactic reverence. From sun worshiping to galactic reverence. From linearity to galactic time. Understanding the true origins of the season, understanding the true origins of today and tomorrow, reawakens to us something far bigger. Beyond the sun, we will join the entire galaxy, guys. And that's what we can hold in our hearts, what we can create in our future as we move into the fluidity of the liminal spaces of time and really achieve the next level of human contact. From the solar systematic sun to the central sun to the galactivation. And there we have it. Mary Mushroom, Christ Consciousness, Spiritual Awakening, Tree of Life, Pagan, Sun, Seasonal Awakening, Santa Claustrum, Saturnalia, Elemental, Luminal, Spinal Fluid Reverence Day to every single one of you. I love you all. Thank you for tuning in. And that's the presentation. So we'll stick on here for a few more minutes, get some feedback and chat with you guys. And I want to share with you one event before we call it for today. Whoa, 2 hours on point. You can't make this stuff up, guys. Thank you so much. We'll read some of these comments. So happy to be ascending with you all. We are all walking each other home. Yes, I love that one so much. Thank you so much, teacher. Since we're all in here, we got a good amount of people. Let's do intention setting right now. Go ahead and throw into the field. Let's take a few breaths in first, in and out of the heart. Center yourself. Throw into the field an intention for yourself and for your soul. For you as a person. Go ahead and type it into the chat. Something you want to create, something you want to embody, something you want to bring into the world, something you're moving towards, something that you love. Any of those. Where two or more gather, we should always manifest our intentions. And we'll read it out. Feel free to read it out as it comes along too. We got C2 Saints saying peace. So if you could do one for yourself, and you could do one for the world. One for the world. Much fun. Truth. Constant evolution, connection with others, mutual evolution. Peace and love. Kindness. Leaving all my anger behind and elevating to a higher level where I know we are all part of the same origin and I don't want to hold blame anymore. It's such a beautiful intention, teacher. I'm with you on that. Kindness. Let a few more come in. Conscious expansion, unconditional acceptance. Mental balance while informed. Patience and understanding. I'll put it once. Divine wisdom in love. Inner peace, trust, joy, expansion. Beautiful. I'm to answer your question, teacher. Yeah, I'm still in Medellin for another week, and then I moved to Cali, actually, to Cali. Physical healing and walking for myself and husband, as well as raising the human consciousness into Christ's love. All right, so we're gonna do together. Together, we're gonna say, and so it is, 3 times. We're gonna actualize all of this. Take a gander, take a glance at what everybody shared. Read it out loud to yourself. Read it internally. Great opportunity for us to put it all in the field and just to expand it out into actualization, into reality. Expand awakening for all. Connection to those that have left this plane of reality. Just gonna read these one more time. Peace, fun, truth, evolution, connection for others, for mutual evolution, peace and love, kindness, leaving anger behind, patience, understanding, mental balance while informed, conscious expansion, unconditional acceptance, divine wisdom and love, inner peace, trust, joy, expansion, physical healing, and walking for myself and husband, waking, as well as raising the human consciousness into Christ's love. Expanding awakening for all, connection to those who have left this plane of reality. So be it. All right, everybody. We're going to say, and so it is, 3 times. All right. So deep inhale in 3. So be it 3 times. 3, 2, 1. Inhale. And so it is. And so it is. And so it is. And so it is. Say it one more time. And so it is. There we go. Let's let that into the field. And in the end of the solstice season here, as we expand into tomorrow, allow for all of our dreams, aspirations, and hopes for ourselves to be fulfilled, and for the whole of humanity in the world, so we can truly live in beautiful peace, abundance, harmony, prosperity that works for all of us, not just a few. Thank you. So the last thing now, okay. So you can see, I already have it up here. If you guys have not heard at this point that I have purchased a Legacy Expo that dates back many years. 2001, it was called New Living Expo, but it has roots from 1982 called the Whole Life Expo in San Rafael, California, which is just over the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin County, about 40 minutes from Oakland. And this event honestly has a huge place in my heart because I used to be a vendor there 10, 12 years ago selling Tibetan bowls. The way I funded Portal to Ascension before it actually generated an income I could survive on was going to expos and selling Tibetan bowls that my cousin in India was importing from India, exporting from India to me over here. And I was at this event. Who little did I know, 12 years later, I would purchase it. But fortune has rained upon me in regards to being fortunate, and now I have had the opportunity to negotiate with the past owner and actually take this on as one of Portal to Ascension's events every year, which is incredible because, as you all know, we're going through a lot of shifts in the world. Not only in the spiritual world are we speaking about this, but also in the mainstream. AI, quantum computing, 3D printing, you know, disclosure, UFOs that existing, ETs, non-human intelligences. God, wow, the list goes freaking on. There's so much going on, right? And the world is going to be changing. And now that the world is changing on a level that is unprecedented, that we might not even recognize this world in 3 to 4 years from now, I am so fortunate and happy that I have now taken on this legacy event into the future where we're going to really be modeling conscious collaboration, partnerships on a level that I haven't seen before in this community, in this world of conferences and expos, and also create a place where thousands can gather so that we can have some real impact and have a lot of fun. And so I invite every single one of you to please come there. I'm working so hard on this, 12 hours a day, literally for the last 3 weeks. Kid you not? Every single day for 3 weeks, 12 hours a day, just to get this somewhat ready to be, on the level that we need to plan this out. And we're going to have over 90 speakers, 125 exhibitors, and it's going to be for 3 days, 3,000 plus attendees. And it's only $55 to attend because, we have vendors in Expo Lounge. We want you to interact with the vendors there. Next level technology, biohacking, next level ancient civilizations information, UFOs, extraterrestrial connections. The list goes on and on, really. It's going to be hundreds of topics there. So love for you to come. Again, April 17th to 19th. And in closing, I'm going to play the trailer for this event. And we'll do that in just a second. But I just want to read some more comments before we officially close out. Yeah, some of the speakers here. Check out newlivingexpo.com. Let me put the link in the chat. This is my 6th annual presentation on the, oops, I misspelled that. 6th annual presentation on the pagan origins of Christmas and New Year's Eve. There we go. When the shift hits the fan, love a synchronistic event. And yep, Zazar will be there as well. So everybody, I appreciate you all very much. Thank you for tuning in with me today. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're not on YouTube, you're on Twitter or Instagram, go to our YouTube page because we got nonstop amazing things happening up until the 4th, obviously until afterwards as well. Tomorrow, we're playing The Truth, Life, and Times of Yeshua, 6-hour conference in the day. So if you're at home, if you want to watch a Christmas movie, watch The Real Life of Yeshua. And as soon as that's over, we have a 6-hour event on the life of Mary Magdalene. Each one of these conferences, so there's 12 hours of content tomorrow on our YouTube. Each one of these conferences are 6.5 hours long and have 8 speakers in them each. So all day, fun stuff. Check in for it. New Year's Day, I'm doing an astrology event with Raquel Spring. We're going to be talking about some cool stuff, what's happening this year astrologically. And then January 2nd on YouTube, I'm going live with Billy Carson on disclosure information. And then January 3rd and January 4th, we have the 2-day Real Disclosure Conference, 2 days of nonstop UFO information, starting the year out strong with a lot of content and a lot of awareness on the fact that we're not alone in the universe. All right. And with that, everybody, I'm going to play the trailer. We're going to call it for today. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for being here with me. Enjoy the next few days, Christmas or whatever you're celebrating, the solstice. Have an amazing time. And we will see you in a few days. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
The world is changing faster than ever before. And within this evolution, a new consciousness is rising. At the New Living Expo, thousands gather to expand consciousness, explore new conscious technologies, ancient wisdom, and the future of human potential. Immerse yourself in 3 days of heart-expanding wisdom and mind-binding awareness, with over 90 speakers sharing tools to awaken your highest potential. 125 exhibitors, 3,000 attendees, awakened souls unite in one powerful weekend of learning, healing, and connection. Experience transformation, connection, and the next chapter of human evolution. It is time for humanity to awaken. Join us at newlivingexpo.com.